Recording. Personal log, Professor Blixar, Head of Physical Education, Galactic Unity Academy. Date. Standard cycle, 3372. Let me tell you about the day that changed everything at our prestigious institution. The day we learned that what humans consider a basic workout routine could send half our student body to the medical wing. Oh, and spoiler alert, it is also the day I almost lost my job, my dignity, and my remaining 3 tentacles. Professor Blixar, Dean Vornthal had said, his crystalline structure gleaming under the artificial lights of his office. I would like you to meet our newest addition to the Physical Education Department, Coach Sarah Chen. I remember rotating all 4 of my eye stalks towards the small figure standing before me. Small by my Zentarian standards, that is. By human measurements, she stood at what they call 5 feet 8 inches, with a muscular build that spoke of years of athletic training. Her dark hair was pulled back in what humans call a ponytail, and she wore what she later told me was standard Earth workout attire, something called yoga pants and a moisture-wicking top. A pleasure to meet you, Professor, she said, extending her hand in that peculiar human greeting gesture. I look forward to working with you and bringing some new perspectives to the physical education program. New perspectives. Ha! If only I had known then what chaos those new perspectives would bring. But I am getting ahead of myself. Coach Chen comes highly recommended from Earth's top athletic institutions. Dean Vornthal continued, his crystalline form vibrating with what I recognized as enthusiasm. She has experience working with diverse groups and— Pardon my interruption, Dean, I said, my voice pouches inflating with concern. But are we certain about bringing a Deathworlder into our physical education program? The strength differentials alone could pose significant risks. Sarah, to her credit, did not seem offended. Instead, she smiled. A gesture I would later learn could mean anything from genuine amusement to impending doom. I understand your concerns, Professor. I have reviewed the physiological profiles of all species currently enrolled at the Academy. I assure you, I can adapt any exercise routine to be safe and beneficial for everyone. The Dean's crystalline structure sparkled with what we call a decision shimmer. It is precisely why we hired Coach Chen. The Galactic Education Board has been pushing for more inclusive fitness programs. Having a human perspective will help prepare our students for a galaxy where they will inevitably interact with Deathworlders. I waved my upper tentacles in resignation, a gesture that humans often misinterpret as enthusiastic agreement. Very well. When do you propose we begin? I have already prepared a basic warm-up routine we can start with tomorrow, Sarah said, pulling out what she called a tablet. Nothing too strenuous. Just some simple stretches, jumping jacks, light jogging, and a few basic calisthenics. I should have noticed the warning signs, the way her definition of basic made the Dean's crystalline structure vibrate at a slightly higher frequency. The casual way she mentioned jumping, as if everyone in the galaxy had evolved with that capability. But no, I was too focused on maintaining my professional composure. That sounds reasonable, I lied, making a mental note to update my personal insurance policy. I look forward to observing your methods. As Sarah left the office with that boundless human energy they all seemed to possess, I turned all my eye stalks toward the Dean. Sir, for the record, if this experiment ends in disaster, I want it noted that I expressed concerns. The Dean's crystalline structure emitted what we call an amusement sparkle. Noted, Professor Blixar, but really, how challenging could a basic human warm-up routine be? Oh, you sweet, naive crystal being. If only we had known. If only we had consulted the historical records of other institutions that had attempted to integrate human physical education standards. But no, we were about to learn this lesson the hard way, one jumping jack at a time. As Sarah demonstrated her idea of a push-up, I watched 27 different species collectively question their life choices. The human body, defying what most species consider reasonable gravitational interaction, lowered itself to the ground and pushed back up with apparent ease. Sarah did 10 repetitions before looking up at the class with that perpetually enthusiastic smile. Now your turn. Remember to keep your core tight. Professor, Zentix's crystalline voice chimed in panic. "I do not believe we share the same definition of core. In my species, the core is where we store our backup consciousness." Before I could translate this cultural difference to Sarah, the class erupted into what I can only describe as organized pandemonium. Let me break down the scene for proper documentation, as I suspect the Galactic Education Board will want a detailed report. First, we had the anti-gravity species attempting to reconcile the concept of pushing against a surface when they had specifically evolved to avoid all contact with solid matter. The floatlings, in particular, seemed deeply offended by the entire concept. "But why would we want to go down?" asked Zephyr, their cloud-like forms swirling in confusion. "We spent 3 million years of evolution specifically learning how not to go down." Meanwhile, Glocks, still existing as two separate entities from the jumping jack incident, had an interesting interpretation of the exercise. One half would flatten against the floor, while the other half remained upright. Then they would switch positions. Technically correct if you thought about it creatively enough. "Excellent adaptation, Glocks," Sarah called out encouragingly. "Both of you." Pip-Pip, our determined avian student, was having his own unique struggle. His species, naturally adapted for flight, found the whole concept of intentionally going toward the ground rather than away from it to be philosophically challenging. "This is against everything my ancestors fought for," he squawked. But bless his determined little heart, he kept trying. Unfortunately, his push-ups looked more like a mating dance from the southern Cretix colonies. The crystalline students had formed a support group in the corner, quietly humming at frequencies I suspect were meant to be soothing. One of them had developed a small crack from attempting to bend in ways their mineral-based structure was never meant to achieve. "Do not forget to breathe," Sarah called out, which caused another wave of confusion. "Some of us photosynthesize," came a cry from the plant-based collective. "I absorb nutrients through osmosis," Glocks's two halves announced in unison. "I am literally made of breathing," Zephyr protested. That was when the first medical alert buzzed on my communication device. The Academy's medical bay was sending an automated inquiry about the sudden spike in student distress signals. I glanced around the gym, doing a quick count. We had already lost 3 crystalline students to what they dramatically called structural integrity meditation. 5 more were showing signs of what humans might call exhaustion, but in various species manifested as color changes, phase shifts, and in one concerning case, budding reproduction. "Perhaps we should take a break," I suggested to Sarah, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice pouches. "Oh, we are just getting to the good part," Sarah said, her human enthusiasm apparently immune to the chaos around her. "Time for mountain climbers." The universal translator gave up entirely at this point and just displayed an error message. Several students began looking around frantically for actual mountains, which, given our indoor facility, was concerning. Sarah demonstrated the exercise, her human body moving in ways that made several species begin emergency preservation protocols. It looked like she was trying to run while in a push-up position, which violated at least 3 known laws of physics, according to most galactic standards. That was when the second wave of chaos hit. Pip-Pip, in a valiant attempt to mimic the movement, achieved liftoff and got tangled in the ceiling sensors. The Glorbon students, interpreting the exercise through their gaseous perspective, created what can only be described as a localized weather system. Small lightning bolts began arcing between them. "The energy, the power, that is it, everyone," Sarah cheered, apparently interpreting the electromagnetic discharge as enthusiasm. Another medical alert buzzed, then another and another. My communication device started making sounds I did not even know it was capable of producing. "Coach Chen," I said, now using all 6 tentacles to stabilize various struggling students. "I believe we may need to—" "Just 5 more minutes," she called back. "Then we will move on to planks." The word planks caused 3 crystalline students to immediately enter emergency stasis. A floatling student condensed in terror to half their normal size. Both halves of Glocks rippled in what I can only interpret as protoplasmic protest. The medical bay's chief physician, Dr. Lumi, burst through the gymnasium doors at this point. Their bioluminescent form was flashing what I recognized as emergency medical codes. Our sensors are registering unprecedented levels of physical stress from multiple species, they announced, their glow patterns shifting rapidly through warning colors. We have detected 17 different types of distress signals, including 3 we had not previously documented. Oh, that is just the endorphins kicking in, Sarah said brightly. Endorphins? Dr. Lumi's luminescence dimmed in confusion. Most of these species do not produce endorphins. The crystalline students are exhibiting stress fractures. The gaseous students have achieved previously unknown levels of ionic excitation, and one of your students appears to have accidentally initiated mitosis. We all looked at Glocks, who was now showing signs of potentially becoming 3 entities. Professor Blixar, Dr. Lumi's voice took on the tone of someone documenting a disaster for future warning manuals. As Chief Medical Officer, I am officially declaring this a multi-species health emergency. This class must be suspended immediately. Sarah finally stopped demonstrating exercises, her human face showing the first signs of comprehending the situation. Around us, the gymnasium looked like a scene from a documentary about extreme planetary weather phenomena, complete with localized gravity distortions, electromagnetic anomalies, and what appeared to be a small crystalline revolution forming in the corner. I may have slightly miscalculated the interspecies fitness compatibility factors, she admitted, watching as Pip-Pip was finally rescued from the ceiling sensors by the emergency response drone. Dr. Lumi's bioluminescence shifted to what we call emergency intervention patterns. The medical bay is already at 120% capacity. We have students in various states of physical distress, including phase shifting, unexpected molecular bonding, and what appears to be spontaneous evolutionary responses. The doctor paused, their glow darkening significantly. And this was just from the warm-up? Sarah nodded, finally looking somewhat abashed. We had not even gotten to the actual workout yet. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of another crystalline student entering emergency stasis and the gentle splashing of Glocks attempting to become one entity again. I checked my communication device, which was now practically having a meltdown from all the medical alerts. I believe, I said with as much dignity as I could muster, we should schedule an emergency meeting with the Board of Education immediately. After everyone has been properly rehydrated, recrystallized, regasified, or reintegrated, Dr. Lumi added, gesturing to the various Glocks portions that were now showing signs of developing distinct personalities. As emergency medical drones began evacuating students, I could not help but notice that Sarah was still doing what she called cool-down stretches. Humans, I was learning, had a very different definition of the word cool-down, and warm-up, and exercise, and possibly reality itself. The emergency board meeting was called to order in what humans would call record time, though our time-shifting board member insisted on pointing out that records were relative in a quantum universe. The conference room was packed with various faculty members, medical staff, and species representatives. Dean Vornthal's crystalline structure was vibrating at what we call the frequency of professional concern. Dr. Lumi began their presentation, their bioluminescent patterns projecting data directly onto the wall. Distinguished board members, what you are about to see defies several established medical parameters. The first holographic chart appeared, showing physical stress levels across different species. The graph looked less like data and more like a mountain range having an existential crisis. As you can see, Dr. Lumi continued, their glow pulsing with concern, the simple act of what humans call jumping jacks caused stress levels that our medical equipment initially registered as a small-scale planetary disaster. Sarah, sitting next to me, raised her hand. But we only did 20 of them. The entire board collectively flinched at the number. Coach Chen, Dean Vornthal chimed in, his crystalline resonance wavering. Perhaps you could explain what you consider a difficult workout. Oh, well, for a really intense session, I might do 100 jumping jacks, followed by 50 burpees, a few hundred mountain climbers, and finish with a nice 5-mile run. The time-shifting board member temporarily phased out of our reality in shock. When they reappeared, they had somehow moved 3 seats to the left and were clutching what appeared to be a stress ball from 2 dimensions over. Dr. Loomy pulled up the next slide. This is the chemical analysis from our gaseous students after attempting these exercises. The data showed molecular structures that had been excited to the point of nearly achieving consciousness of their own. And this, they continued, switching to another terrifying chart, shows the structural integrity readings from our crystalline students. 3 of them developed what they are calling enlightenment cracks. But those are good, right? Sarah asked hopefully. I mean, enlightenment sounds positive. Not when it is followed by structural disintegration, muttered Zentix, who had been called to represent the crystalline student body and was still showing hairline fractures from attempting a plank. The medical report continued with horrifying efficiency. Apparently, the floatling students had achieved density levels previously thought impossible. The plant-based collective had begun emergency flowering, and Glocks, who was now officially 3 separate entities attending the meeting, had submitted 3 different complaints in perfect unison. And this was just from what Coach Chen described as a basic warm-up routine, Dr. Loomy concluded, their luminescence dimming dramatically. Our projections for a full workout suggest possible violations of several laws of physics. But this is the easiest routine I know, Sarah protested, genuine bewilderment in her voice. I teach this to human children. The room fell into stunned silence, broken only by the sound of another board member quietly entering emergency stasis. Dean Vornthal's crystalline structure emitted what we call the chimes of diplomatic crisis management. Coach Chen, we now understand that your intentions were admirable. However, it appears we may have underestimated the intensity gap between human and non-human physical capabilities. The medical bay is still treating students, Dr. Loomy added. Pip-Pip has developed what he calls an existential fear of gravity. The Glauben students are refusing to condense back to their normal density. And well, Glocks is now applying for 3 separate student IDs. We do not blame you, the Dean continued kindly. This has been an enlightening, if somewhat traumatic, learning experience for all of us. But clearly some policy changes are needed. Sarah looked around the room, finally seeming to grasp the magnitude of the situation. I suppose offering to demonstrate a proper workout would be inappropriate right now. The time-shifting board member phased out again briefly, this time returning with what appeared to be stress balls from 5 different dimensions. Perhaps, I suggested diplomatically, we should focus on developing more species-appropriate exercise guidelines and possibly updating our insurance policies, all of them. The following week, the Galactic Unity Academy unveiled its new, comprehensively revised physical education program. The guidelines now included such innovations as quantum relaxation for our time-shifting students, density fluctuation exercises for our gaseous colleagues, and what we called structural integrity meditation for our crystalline population. Sarah, much to everyone's surprise, adapted to the changes with that remarkable human flexibility. She now runs what has become the most notorious elective in the Academy's history, extreme sports and Deathworld athletics. The class comes with no fewer than 37 warning labels and requires students to sign waivers in 3 different dimensions. The enrollment numbers are actually quite impressive, Dean Vornthal commented during our latest faculty meeting, his crystalline structure gleaming with what we had learned to recognize as cautious optimism. Though I do notice it is mostly populated by what the students call adrenaline seekers and those who have, quote, made peace with their molecular stability. The original incident, now known across campus as the Great Physical Education Crisis of 3372, has become something of a legend. New students are warned about it during orientation, usually accompanied by dramatic reenactments from the now famous Triple Glocks Performance Art Collective. Sarah's original workout routine has been classified as a potential weapon of mass exhaustion by the Galactic Security Council. The medical bay keeps a copy of it locked away in a quantum-sealed vault, right next to samples of various highly unstable substances and a recording of what humans call dad jokes. "You know what still amazes me?" Sarah said to me recently as we watched her current class of Daredevil students, attempting what she called a light jog. On Earth, this would barely qualify as a children's fitness class. I waved my tentacles in what she now knows is not enthusiastic agreement. "Sarah, your species casually participates in something called marathon running. We had to add a separate chapter to our xenobiology textbooks just to explain why that is not considered a form of ritual torture." She laughed, a sound that still causes our gaseous students to vibrate sympathetically. "Wait until I tell you about ultramarathons." I have learned not to ask follow-up questions about human athletic activities. My remaining tentacles thank me for this wisdom. The Academy has, however, gained quite a reputation. We are now known as the premier institution for cross-species fitness studies, though this is largely because we are the only institution with documented research on what happens when you try to teach a crystalline being to do burpees. As for me, I have gained a new appreciation for the sheer terrifying resilience of humanity. I watch Sarah demonstrate what she calls a proper push-up to her advanced class, her movements casual and relaxed, while even our most athletic non-human students struggle to comprehend the biomechanics involved. The medical bay has developed an entire new wing dedicated to what they call Deathworlder-inspired incidents. Dr. Lumi now gives regular presentations at galactic medical conferences about the importance of species-appropriate exercise modifications and the dangers of assuming all bipedal organisms share the same relationship with gravity. And Glocks. Well, the three of them graduated with honours in physical education, quantum physics, and performance arts, respectively. They occasionally return to give guest lectures about the importance of understanding your protoplasmic limits and the unexpected benefits of accidental mitosis. As I finish this log entry, I cannot help but chuckle at the warning sign now prominently displayed in our gymnasium. Caution: human exercise standards may cause spontaneous evolution, dimensional shifting, and existential crises. Sarah just poked her head into my office to ask if I would like to join her weekend rock climbing expedition. I politely declined, all four of my eye stalks firmly focused on my paperwork. Some mysteries of human physical capabilities are better left unexplored. End log. Postscript: the time-shifting board member has requested I add a temporal warning that reading this account may cause retroactive muscle soreness in certain species. Please consult your local timeline before proceeding. Double post. Script: yes, all three Glockses insisted on signing this document, separately, with different colour bioluminescent inks. Triple post script: no, we still do not know what happened to the emergency stress balls from alternate dimensions. Last seen, they were being used as therapeutic aids in the quantum psychology department.